There is not a one-size-fits-all solution to leadership. Discover your inspiration to lead by hearing from those who are in the trenches each day, leading themselves and leading others. We will learn about their unique leadership style and identify the shared qualities between those who do it tremendously well. Welcome to the Lead with Empower podcast. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Lead with Empower podcast. We are episode 3, season 5. You have Mr. Ron Davis, Dan Jaskot here from Empower Leadership. Excited to be here. It's been a month since our last episode. Ron, how's everything going for you so far at the start of March?
Hey, everything's great. Trying to deal with this weather up and down. I don't know if it wants to be hot or cold. Either way it goes, trying to relax, trying to stay healthy. It's been great.
Awesome. Yeah, no snow December, January, February, and like March 1st, they decide to blast us with it, you know? But hey man, we had this past weekend, we had a great program out in Danbury, Connecticut with Western Connecticut State University's softball program. This was our 4th time working with Coach Stone and her athletes. Our first program with them was back in March of 2020, like right before everything shut down. Right. We've had a couple engagements in between, but this is our first program with the 2023 ball club, as they say out at WestCon. Good group of athletes. They're heading down to Florida for their little spring training event where they'll play what feels like probably 17 games a day. We worked with them for a few hours on Saturday. In your mind, what was something that you saw that, hey, I don't know how good they are at softball, but, you know, I feel good about the outlook for the team? What were some of the qualities that you might have seen from the athletes on Saturday that give you some hope for their upcoming season?
One that really stood out to me was camaraderie.
Yeah.
You could tell that this team, they liked each other.
Yeah.
You could tell that they was working on building synergy. You could tell that they were deeply involved and engaged with one another, willing and ready to help develop one another, both personally and professionally. I saw a lot of great things that stood out far as what I look at or seek out in a leader or leadership qualities. I saw a lot of that during that program.
Great. What was, and then if you could pick maybe one highlight moment, for you from Saturday, was there a certain activity that stuck out to you, a certain maybe thing that was said by the athletes during one of the debriefs?
Yeah, absolutely. The final debrief, we discussed some keep, stop, start things, and we're going to talk about that later on in the podcast. We had one participant identify that during the pipeline exercise or activity, it was a lot of chaos. They were going back and forth doing the same actions and obtaining the same results in regards to failure, essentially failure. When we were doing a debrief, it was asked, what are some of those things that we could change? And that same participant said to the group, elaborated to the group that if we would have took the time, executed our plan, make adjustments to the plan, and then execute again, we would have had better results than continuously, being chaotic and just doing the same thing and having the same results.
Yeah, maybe more efficient results, like getting to that, hey, we did it, we're done with this exercise a little bit quicker than, maybe minimize a little bit of frustration probably right. too. A little bit of work maybe sometimes goes a long way when it comes to trying to figure out what's broken and how you can fix it.
Right. And also, too, just seeing that whole process. I mean, we've seen it time and time again. But with this group, what I saw was a lot of conflict resolution. Yep. Individuals, like, I didn't have to step in. Yep. Individuals had those tough conversations to rectify a lot of those errors.
Yeah, which is great. And 2 things really stuck out to me. One, there were, I think, 5 freshmen that were members of the softball team. And, having been in the sport environment or really any environment, corporate, as a school, when you're kind of the new person or new people that are part of a group, sometimes it can be, overwhelmingly intimidating, and you hesitate to maybe ruffle feathers and step up and lead or step up and try to hold yourself and other people accountable. And that was like the total opposite with this group. Like some of the, I don't want to say stronger leaders, but some of the things that really stuck out to me were from those first year student athletes at WestCon. And that, obviously we hope they have a successful season this year, but it kind of was a nice little thing to see for the long-term health of the softball program there, is when you have, you know, a group of 5 out of 20, so a quarter of your roster, first-year athletes, student athletes, and to see them ready to carry the torch and ready to get things done, it's got to be a bright spot for Coach Stone, you know, looking into this year, but also beyond this year for the health of the program moving forward.
Absolutely.
And then I would agree with you. You know, we had the athletes vote on a team MVP at the end of the program for the program, for the team building event, and it was cool to hear that one of the athletes who maybe struggles at times with negative body language and disengagement was the winner of the MVP softball trophy for the event, because she did the total opposite during the program. She maintained that, maybe not false positive outlook, but maintained a solid positive outlook and really kept engaged in the program. And, so often than not, it's, not some sort of extraordinary quality or superpower, as you're going to touch on in a moment, that defines who somebody is as a leader. A lot of times it's just, hey, does this person have the wherewithal to do those little things, and staying engaged and staying positive and not letting negative body language get in the way of your success is definitely one of those little things where if it happens once, you recover from it pretty easily. But if it's a consistent issue, it definitely is a major roadblock to success.
I totally agree. And one of those things that stood out, and we talked about it, each and every day is a new opportunity for you to get better.
Yep.
And that's what we saw. That's what the participant demonstrated, was that ability to sit there and grow. Take those bumps and bruises. Look at those obstacles. Not look at an obstacle that's one that's going to defeat her, but one of those obstacles that's going to propel her to get better.
Yep. Love it. So it was a great time together. Absolutely worth the hour-long drive out to Danbury to team build with those athletes. And if you're listening, hope it's a safe trip down to Florida and that you have great successes down there. And for our listeners, we're going to be doing something brand new with Empower Leadership this year. We're actually going to be doing some formal check-ins with both the coaching staff from Westcon softball and some of the student athletes over the course of the season. And really the goal is to track from a 3.5-4 hour team building event, to track those takeaways that the athletes identified and to see how they translate onto the diamond. And, neither one of us are experts at collegiate softball. That's not why we were brought in for the program. But being able to handle conflict, being able to fight those demons of negative body language and frustration, being able to hold yourself and others accountable were a couple of the big highlights that the athletes brought up at the end of the program. Really excited as we kind of stay in touch with them and we have them on as guests on the podcast. Super excited to see how that stuff translates to their success on the field. So stay tuned, listeners. Moving forward, we will have extra special episodes of the Lead with Empower podcast to follow up with Coach Heather Stone and the Westcon softball athletes. So, Baran, we're going to make our first little segue right here. A couple weeks ago, you wrote a phenomenal blog article. All right. Leaders for hire, superheroes need not apply.
Right.
We're getting into this conversation and, we talk about sometimes leadership can be blown into this project that's like overbearing and like feels like you're holding up the entire planet, when in reality, it's doing those little things, right? Because those little things add up to big successes. I'm very interested now that you've had a chance to digest and the blog's been out there. It's been on our website, leadwithempower.com. Going through the process of writing that and now kind of reflecting on it, share with our listeners maybe a few key points that really stick out to you that could be beneficial for aspiring leaders, whether it's students or professionals or athletes.
Before I get into that, we got to identify who our superheroes are.
I like it.
Yeah. So I'll throw that back in your court. Like, who are yours? I mean, you give me yours, and then I'll give you who my superhero was.
My favorite superhero? I mean, I don't know if this even qualifies, but I'm going Luke Skywalker, Star Wars. All right, he went from a whiny guy not wanting to manage his family's space age farm to taking down the evil empire. And kind of had something in him that he didn't know he had, and it took a lot of other people to help him unlock that power, and that power to do good, and that power to resist the urge to go to the evil side, the dark side. So as someone born in 1980 who has original VHSs of the Star Wars original trilogy, that's I'm going with Luke Skywalker hands down. What about you?
It's funny, I always talk about this old Southern boy. We always, add a little flavor to words. It's crazy because I always thought his name was Lionel, like Lionel Richie's, but his name is Lion-O of the Thundercats.
Lion-O of the Thundercats.
One thing, when I looked at leadership, that's when I looked at cartoons, I always look for that leadership position, that individual that was in a position of leadership.
Which there always is, right? There's always is in a cartoon, right. Yeah.
But Lion-O, even though he was a hero, he was one of those first individuals that I saw that brought his team to a table and had a conversation on how they plan on strategizing to defeat the enemy. And I thought that was pretty cool. Even though he had these superpowers, he never neglected the fact that somebody was faster than him, someone was stronger than him, and how to take those individuals and properly place them at friction points to achieve success. Nice. And I thought that was pretty cool. That's why I thought Lion-O. I was a He-Man kid. I was a He-Man.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
Yeah. I thought Papa Smurf was pretty cool because he had a whole village.
Little wisdom, a lot of wisdom. Papa Smurf had a lot of wisdom in that great beard. So.
but then it's crazy because when you from the part of North Carolina that I'm from, and I just got to throw that chime in there. I just learned from being in Connecticut that North Carolina is North Carolina, not a combined North Carolina. Either way it go, I learned that there's opportunity for leadership, or you see opportunities for leadership demonstrated in cartoons or what have you. I mean, it's pretty cool, but because nowadays when I look at it, I really can't see cartoons nowadays and identify anybody that I would, want to be a leader or see leadership qualities in, maybe because I just don't look at cartoons like that.
Yep. Well, yeah, and for those of our younger listeners, get on the Google machine and you can find out about Luke Skywalker and Lion-O to get a greater scope of what Ron and I are talking about if you're very confused right now. Going back to the blog though, right? So
right.
Title of the article is Leaders for Hire, Superheroes Need Not Apply.
Right.
So talk a little bit about the concept first. Yeah.
Right. So when you're talking about leadership and multiple individuals going to conversations, are leaders made? Are they born leaders? Or is this something that you study? How do you become a leader? How do you become an effective and efficient leader? What do you need to do? What do you need to read? How do you become successful as a leader? Well, you always see that in great leaders, and they can give you this roadmap of their success and what they all the adversity they had to go through to develop their leadership. But you don't see that in a superhero. Mm-hmm. You don't see a superhero, this person coming down from the sky, pulling all this feedback and guidance from other individuals. They just go and fly away and save this whole city. Race, beat, speed, and bullets. But that's not what a leader is. Not as we see it. And when you think about being in those tough situations, who can you count on? Mm-hmm. Again, nobody's going to fly down or descend down and provide you guidance. So when we talk about real world heroes, we're not talking about those superheroes. We're talking about individuals that you can see day to day through interaction, whether it's negative or positive, that aids in your development of leadership. And that's what we talk about in regards to we're looking for leaders, not superheroes. Now, with that being said, the superhero that you see nowadays, that you see on a regular basis, doesn't come with a cape.
Yep.
And nor does he have the superpower. Is there any leaders that you know of, Dan, that you looked at growing up that you aspired to be that wasn't a superhero?
Yeah, I and it's probably going to sound cliched, but my father is a guy that I look to. He was a coach, a teacher, an athletic director, was in a school setting as a leader and mentor for students and younger faculty and staff and coaches from like 1975 until I want to say 2018 or 19. And a couple things stick out. One, he treated people, and we growing up in Middletown, pretty diverse. he treated everybody we crossed paths with, regardless of what skin color, how tall, how short, how athletic, how smart, how not intelligent, how funny or not funny, treated everybody with the same level of respect he thought anybody should be treated with. And so that was always one thing that stuck out to me in particular. He was always the guy that looked out for the people that needed someone to look out for them. So there was a student at Xavier High School who was in nonverbal, was in a motorized wheelchair, couldn't walk around on his own, couldn't move around on his own. There were a group of athletes that took care of the student, and my father was always there to make sure the kid was able to get into any sport games that he wanted to go and view as a spectator. And then being a PE teacher in addition to an athletic director and coach, like not necessarily focusing on the students who could throw and catch and run with relative comfort and ease, but those kids that always a lot of times get cast aside in a traditional PE class are the kids that maybe struggle to throw and to run and to catch. And he always enjoyed working with those students because he never felt like someone should be excluded. And and then the other reason he would never shy away from picking up a broom and sweeping the gym, cleaning underneath the bleachers. So those were a couple of things that stuck out to my father. Worked his butt off, and no task was too menial or too small for him. And then was always looking out for those people that could use a little support. And that to me is a huge quality of and it's something I try to emulate on a daily basis. What about you? What about for you, Ron?
Absolutely. That's one of the things that we talked with the Wisconsin softball team was eye servants. Yep. And I gave them some of that Southern swag, and they was like, "What is an eye servant?" I said, "Those individuals that do the things great when the person's they're trying to serve and appease the person that's looking at them."
Yep.
As soon as that person turns their back, that person that's in authority or leadership position, as soon as that person turns their back, they're off doing whatever. Mm-hmm. And I told them, I said, there's no such thing as an eye servant. Get away from being an eye servant. Get away from just doing it because somebody's looking at you. But also, too, we talked about developing your teammates. We don't want one person to just be good at third base. We want multiple individuals to be good at third base or outfield. How can you, I know you're trying to get better, but how are you trying to develop your team members?
Yeah.
Again, that's one of the traits that we just talked about as well. When we talk about developing that team, you're going to have some adversities. And that's where we get away from the whole superhero type thing. A superhero, it's guaranteed success.
Yeah.
We're winning. But as a leader, that's not, as a true leader in the world that we live in, that's not always the case. You're going to have adversity, and that's going to build your team.
If you sorry, go ahead.
So in regards to that, like I bounced that off you. How do you simplify leadership? Like, I mean, is it a right way, wrong way? How are you developing your leadership style?
Yeah, it's difficult because and we've said this in other podcast episodes. I think leadership is super complex, mainly because it's a people business. There's an element of internal in leadership, right? You have to do what you're supposed to do and hold yourself accountable to, whatever, or try your best at least. But when you're really what most people think of as the definition of leadership, it's person A organizing and providing direction to person B or a group of people. And, so everybody is different. Everybody has different personalities, unique personalities, different strengths, different weaknesses. And then you factor in not only all of those variables, but like we all know, is sometimes you wake up and you're just not having, you're not on a good track for a great day. And so now you're battling, how do I make it? Maybe it's not going to be a great day. How do I make it an average day? So then you factor in, not only is everybody different, but everybody's kind of cycle as far as what's going on in their lives is very different. So leadership can be, in my mind, super complex, more complex than like some of your most complex, like math equations, because there's so many variables that you can't necessarily pinpoint in every scenario, every situation that you find yourself in a leader. So, in my mind, I'm a simple man who enjoys simple things. So let's take this complex concept of leadership. And, one of the ways I try to simplify it is, hey, if I can, over the course of 24 hours or however many hours I'm awake in a given day, if I can try to do three things, right? And thing number one is I want to do something that's going to help me become a little bit better at something. So if you're learning an instrument, pick up the instrument once a day and push yourself to try to maybe do a different drill that you haven't tried, something a little bit more complex. Try to play a song that is a little bit above your current pay grade, knowing that it's probably not going to sound great, but I can make progress towards doing something a little bit better. So do something every day, little or big, that helps you advance your skill set in something. That's the first simple thing, or first item. The second item is, well, as we both touched on, leadership is not just about I and me, it's about we. So the second concept to simplify leadership, well, if we're doing something once a day to help ourselves, do something once a day to help somebody else. Mm-hmm. And it could be, hey, let me show you how to do this. It could be, Ron, how's it going? And then a passing conversation. Or it could be, you know what? Ron and I are we get along great, but this is a moment where I got to provide Ron with some tough feedback. And if I care about Ron as a friend, as a teammate, as someone that you work alongside of, that discomfort of the uncomfortable feedback conversation is worth it in the long haul, because if I do it with tact and with respect, it's going to make Ron better at whatever Ron's trying to get better at. And then the third thing, so we have do something to better yourself, do something to better the people around you or a person around you. And then lastly, do something that betters the community that you're in. And this was a topic that came up, recently worked with Xavier High School's entire 9th grade class. And I have about 25 seniors who assist in the facilitation of this program with the 9th graders. And 25 out of like 150 seniors, these kids signed up to kind of further their skills, signed up to give something back to the Xavier High School community. And that was something I said to the 9th graders is, you're going to spend 4 years taking, being, learning from a great group of teachers, learning from a great group of coaches, or, leaders of your performing arts club or whatever it might be. It's only right that if you're taking so much that you can give a little bit back. And, when you talk about how do we make leadership something that's less about superpower and, not as complex as some trigonometry or advanced calculus equation, 3 things. Do something that makes you better. Do something that makes the people around you better. Do something that makes the community that you're in better. And we're not perfect, right? There's times when we miss the mark, but at least if you're putting those efforts forward, you're going to have a positive impact on you and your community over the long haul.
Right. I totally agree with that. I mean, I totally agree. As you know, I'm one of those individuals that first thing I think is team before myself. I try to put others in front of me. I understand that the world that we live in, we cut away the fat. Those individuals that can't get it done, or those individuals that are struggling, we tend to just do away with them and invest a lot of time in those individuals that are making us or making our company successful. But again, just bleeding over to some of those things that I think that I look into or look for in leadership is compassion and being unselfish. And I know that you talked about it in regards to how much time that your father gave. I mean, I think coaching is one of the most unselfish jobs you could have. You would like to elaborate on that? And your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, unless you're at the college level where you're making, however many figures. But yeah, I think those people that are in youth coaching or high school coaching, the pay is typically not something that allows you to retire at 50. And especially at the youth level, winning is important, but that it's really a lot. How am I developing these athletes? And just like anything else, you're dealing with all those variables because it's a people business, and then you factor in the heat of competition, which adds another layer of complexity to leadership. And I'm sure you can speak to it. Is there's things I know for me as 42-year-old who is long since retired from playing competitive sport. There's things that are part of my daily routine now that were learned through competitive sport. Right. I know you wrestled in high school and before joining the Marine Corps. I'm sure there's things that are from your experience as a high school wrestler, a successful high school wrestler, that were part of getting you through those tough moments, in the Marines, and are probably part of getting you through any tough moments that you're facing right now.
Right. Just like any kind of competitive sport or any kind of team sport, that bleeds into the military in regards to how can I better my team?
Yep.
How can I uplift those individuals? Again, I can be the best at whatever I do. And if I'm hoarding knowledge and information and not passing that on to anybody else, I'm just being selfish. I'm
Yep.
not being a team player. Against wrestling, I may not need to work on a shot or stopping any opponents from taking you down, but my teammates did.
Yep.
And working with them only made me better. Again, steel sharp and steel. I think that's what when we talk about our relationship and in regards to how we facilitate others, how can we make each other better? How can we build upon our previous success or failure?
Yep.
And how can we become better from it? So,
and that's something, to kind of make the transition here, that's something we see in a lot of middle school, high school, college students, and even student athletes or other student leaders. The idea of Coach Stone talked about, like, trust the process. When you're part of a team with a very experienced coach who has a lot of success under her belt, there's a reasoning behind everything you're being asked to do, from being in uniform for practice to showing up on time and prepared for practice. And for those aspiring to lead, it doesn't always require you to reinvent the wheel, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you're part of a group, a team, an organization where there's people there that are really looking out for your best interest individually and whatever type of team you're on, corporate, sport, school, there's moments when, you say this, we have 2 eyes and 2 ears and only 1 mouth. We're talk about a fifth of the time that you listen and you hear. And it's okay to be a learner, and it's okay to say, oh, I never thought of it that way, let's try it out. That's one thing that really stuck out to me from the event. And I think, again, when you look at, I'm going to try to do something every day to make myself, the people around me, and the community I'm in better. Sometimes you're going to fall short, and because we're imperfect, we're not superheroes, right? We don't have immunity to fault. We're faultful beings, and we're going to mess up. Hopefully it's like 49% mess ups, 51% do the right thing, at least. So you can tip the scale in that way. But being open to people that have maybe traveled a similar journey to you is always a skill that I see is very valuable in learning how to lead. The other thing, and this is something we try to promote in our programs, in how do we complete this, this task or that task, but also I think applies to leadership, is you heard Ron talk about it earlier, the keep, stop, start method. And, knowing that we're not going to make every decision perfectly, knowing that we're not superheroes and we have faults and we have moments when we fall short and fail. The keep, stop, start is a simple method that allows you to evaluate what happened, why it happened, and what you're going to do about it. What's the good that you want to keep doing? What stopped you from achieving maximum success? And what are you going to start doing to fix that stop? And that is, in my opinion, one of the most useful tools a leader can implement on a daily basis. I did this, I fell short, this is what I want to keep doing, this is the roadblock I'm going to have to avoid, the stop, and this is what I'm going to start doing to avoid that roadblock.
Totally agree. Totally. I mean, so for me, I mean, every time we do a debrief and every time we're talking to participants, we always, whether it's at the beginning of the event, I mean, me briefing it to them, explaining to them what that is. But at the end of the day, it's all about how can we better ourselves? What can we continue doing? What can we stop doing? And what can we start doing? So often we hear, and then you hear it all the time, what's something we can keep doing? Or what's something that we can do better? Communicate. Well, what do you mean by communicate? What are we talking about? Yelling louder, or what? I mean, what are we talking about in regards to what can we keep doing to for the betterment of the team? And again, communication is one thing, but effective and efficient communication is another. Something that we can stop doing. You hear a lot of individuals are unsure because it goes right back to what we discussed before. You don't know what to stop doing when individuals are afraid to tell you that what you're doing wrong, what you're doing right.
Yep.
And I know we talked about it. I know you discussed that previously.
And that was good. We saw that with the softball athletes on Saturday. It was, someone came out right and said, like, when we stopped yelling over each other, we actually heard the right answer and we got to the finish line. But again, a lot of times there's so much focus on social capital that people forget that part of being a great friend, part of being a great teammate is having the hard conversation, even though it might be uncomfortable, knowing that, maybe one day of discomfort in a social dynamic that has benefits over the course of the long haul pays off. And if it's a true friend, they're going to be with you and they're going to appreciate being coached hard. They're going to be, they're going to appreciate receiving constructive feedback when it merits, when it's merited, because they know you're looking out for their best interest to help them try to become the best version of themselves.
Yeah, and when you look at friendship too, I really want to discuss that, because we always talk about what a friend does and what a friend doesn't do. But I will say this right here: for my friend, if my friend hears somebody, backbiting or saying something bad about me, I would rather them come to me and address how we can fix it, not about what an individual may have said.
Having another side conversation, yeah.
Right. Like, don't defend me. It is what it is. But guess what? Every day is a new opportunity for me to give him something better to talk about. Hey, did you see how Ron, moved forward on this, or how he decided and how he assisted in this? Let's talk about the good things that I'm doing, vice and bad. And every day I seek those opportunities.
Yep. No, that's great. And, again, Ron's bringing a unique perspective that we haven't had on the Empower team, is, being in the Marine Corps as both enlisted and as an officer for 25 years. It's a different perspective. And you shared a quote with me earlier today about, or not a quote, but an excerpt from a book. And I love the fact it focuses on Ernie Davis, this expert. And, I think another thing that we see in a lot of our groups is, and you need to be the loudest superhero. I need to be the loudest to be a leader. No, you don't. So, hey, share that little passage right over there as we get close to the closing of the episode here.
Absolutely. But let me throw this in here, and I'm trying to slow down. I am 5'7". I don't care if I'm standing on a stack of books or whatever. I am 5'7". So again, when I come into the room, I may have the loud voice, but I may don't have the appearance as far as command presence, the required command presence. But again, I'll challenge all the viewers to look up who Ernie Davis is. I'm not going to go into his biography. I challenge you to learn, but I will tell you this: he was the first African American Heisman Trophy winner. Mm-hmm. So that may stimulate you to sit there and say, "Let me invest my time in seeing who this gentleman was." But what I will say this right here from an excerpt from a book titled "The Express," talking about Ernie Davis. One of his coaches said, "Ernie Davis was a quiet leader, not the rah-rah guy, but a leader who does it by example. He was very humble, extremely popular with his peers, and respected by the faculty." The coach recalled a time prior to an important game where he gave a hoorah speech, and everybody was all motivated and ran out of the tunnel. And then he looked back, and the star player, Ernie Davis, is not jumping up. He's not loud, but he's assisting another player that wasn't one of the better players, but he was having trouble putting on a shoulder pass. And Ernie Davis looked at him. He said, "You know what?" He didn't tell him anything. He just started fixing his shoulder pass. And before he can even get the player situated, the team had ran out.
Yeah.
And Ernie told the player, "Don't worry about the team. Let's worry about you. Let's get you ready, because you may have to go into the game, and we may need you later on." We say probably didn't. But either way, Ernie Davis took that time. He missed that moment to help that other individual, and he ran out of the tunnel with that player. And I think that's a true testament of unselfishness. Individual that's a team player, an individual that will sacrifice their limelight to bring up an individual to better the team.
Yeah, and it's a huge point, because again, we see the misconception of what leadership really is a lot of times, being, you got to be the loudest, you got to be the smartest, you got to be the best athlete. Most of the time when it comes down to it, full circle, the best leader is the one that's challenging themselves every day, putting themselves out there where, hey, maybe failure could happen, but I know I'm going to push myself. I'm going to push myself, right? I don't know what the result's going to be, but I'm going to push myself out of my comfort zone with hopes that I'm going to get a little bit better. Even if I don't hit the exact mark I'm trying to hit, they do the same thing with other people. Ernie Davis could have very easily left that one backup player hanging in the locker room. But the right thing to do in the moment was to help, to offer a lending hand and to help in that moment. He made that athlete a little bit better. And in the long haul, I can't speak to it because I wasn't there, but I would venture to say that that gesture makes the culture, makes the community that you're in a little bit better. When I know Ron's looking out for me and Ron knows I'm looking out for him. When a student knows other students and teachers are looking out for them, it makes it a safer environment to learn, a safer environment to explore what it really means to lead. And again, not a superhero action, right? Just the right action, right? Not a superhero action, just the right action.
And again, it didn't need any kind of superpower to detect this person was having a problem.
Yep.
Again, and that's what we talk about as far as leadership. You don't have to have these wonderful tools, these things that can't be emulated by anybody else. Again, I wish I could be fast like Superman. I wish I could had this lasso like Wonder Woman that I can grab and make individuals tell me the truth.
Yep.
But it doesn't happen that way. And to believe that it's that simple is unrealistic.
Yep. And what it comes down to, and this is something I shared with the 9th graders at Xavier High School last week during our end of their first year kind of leadership retreat. I'll ask you to pardon my language right here, but if we know that it's a simple action to make yourself better, make the people around you better, and make the community better, what it comes down to more times than not, is there a high enough level of give a shit to do it? Right. And so if you're wondering, if you're listening, whether young professional or a student, if you care to do those 3 things on a basis, on a daily basis, if you are invested in yourself and the people around you and your community that much, you truly care, and you'll be able to do those things. And when you fall short, if it's a fall short with the right intentions, those are always things you can learn from and get better by. When you fall short because you're mean, you're malicious, you're trying to step on somebody else, or your gain is at the expense of somebody else, those are the things that come back around and get you with a little karma. So the give a shit value has got to be high in leadership. You have to care, and you have to be willing to put yourselves out there for the betterment of yourself, the people around you, and the community that you're in.
I couldn't have said it better.
Hey, well, Ron, another great time talking shop on the Lead with Empower podcast. For those of you that are listening, don't make it more complex than it needs to be. Be decent to yourself, be decent to the people around you, be decent to the place that you're probably taking so much from, and that stuff will come and pay it forward in fruition down the road for you. We really appreciate you checking in. Please stay tuned for our future episodes with Western Connecticut softball. And please remember, go out there, push yourself to be the best that you can be. Ron, always a pleasure, man. Great job today.
Yes, sir.
Great leadership may look and sound different. However, there are common threads that connect all tremendous leaders. They are passionate about those that they lead. They do that which brings out their best and the best in those around them. And they never take the easy way out, because the exceptional will never come from easy.